You might not realize it, but we are exposed to dozens of hazards every day. Can any of these hazards negatively impact your health? Definitely. This is the Exposure Scientist Podcast. My name is Alex LeBeau, and here we answer your questions and concerns on what you may be exposed to every day. Welcome to the Exposure Scientist Podcast. Hello and welcome to today's edition of the Exposure Scientist Podcast. It's the summertime, it's been hot, and it's the time of year where Legionella and Legionnaires disease are beginning to pop their cases up in a number of different places across the country. You've probably seen news stories or articles about them appearing. There's recently, as a notification went out in the July 4th weekend from the New York Department of Health, which said that there's an outbreak occurring up there. A number of different cases. I think a minimum last I saw was about 50 confirmed cases associated with a number of different buildings. It is that time of year when these things are going to happen. And there have been some changes, positive or otherwise, in some landscapes as far as managing those risks associated with Legionella and Legionnaires disease and finding out the best way to, I'll say, treat them or address them. Sometimes the people making decisions do good things, and sometimes the people making decisions do bad things. So we're going to cover some of that today. Let's start with the good. I guess we should get the good out of the way. So there, as recently as May 8th, I'm going to try something new here in the podcast today. If you're watching a video portion of this, we're going to try to share our screen. We're getting with the new technology of 2026. So this says new Legionella testing regulations for cooling towers go into effect citywide as summer nears. This is from New York City Health. It talks about there are new regulations for cooling towers. It changes the requirement from cleaning the towers from every 90 days to a maximum of 31 days. That's interesting. You know, this was brought about in some part in response to a fast-moving outbreak that occurred in 2025 that was evolving so rapidly, and there were such changes in the exposure scenarios that the 90-day cleaning, they theorize, was not sufficient to capture and maintain and adequately address the presumptive Legionella source from these cooling towers from the 2025 outbreak. So in response, in part, from what I understand, was this new citywide cooling tower rule that went into effect. It discusses why they've done it. There are still some requirements for cleaning towers in New York as far as when you bring it up from an off-season outage. But this is going to increase the amount of times it is going to be cleaned. Now, what are the rules and regulations for cleaning and cooling towers and recommendations? Well, that varies. For cooling towers, you know, a good visual observation will at least tell you how the system looks. You know, your testing, your daily testing, your Legionella culture testing will tell you how the system is operating. The cleaning will take it to a new level, but again, it needs to be more than just a performative box checking exercise. It actually needs to be done correctly, and someone needs to verify that it has been done correctly. And see here on the stories I was talking about, New York City announced this about the Central Harlem Community Cluster of Legionnaires disease cases. There are 118 cases of Legionnaires disease that they identified. So this is a good thing, I think. And we're going to see, New York's going to see how it goes. When New York does stuff, other people may catch on. You know, they're, again, the first in the country to have this testing or the regulations for cooling towers. Other places have adopted them. These are updates to those changes. I think that's a good thing overall. So let's, I'll say let's praise New York when we can on their efforts here. Now, an interesting thing that was brought to my attention recently, for better or for worse, is, and it's hard to find out when this change occurred, And I have some information on that. So I'm in Florida. So Florida, I'll say Florida regulations and rules are important to me. And when I'm looking through or handling matters that are close to home, I see things that make me go, why? Why was this done? When was the change? What was the scientific rationale for it? And is there support for it? And is it difficult to do? So I'll clue you in. As you probably know, uh, the, the the low hanging fruit for looking for presumptive causative cases, I'll say, of travel associated Legionnaire's disease. If someone's staying in a hotel or somewhere else that has amenities, everyone focuses on the spa. They say the spa is likely the primary source of the exposure. It could be true, could not be, because again, as you think about all your exposures occurring throughout your entire trip, that's just one spot along the way. But spa care is important. There's no doubt about it. Making sure that you have a clean spa, it's operating effectively, you're disinfecting it appropriately, cleaning it appropriately, doing everything you need to as far as state regulations or recommendations. It's a good thing to do, just generally for an operational standpoint. In the state of Florida, I'll share my screen here again for those that are on the video podcast. We'll see how this goes again. The state of Florida, they issue they're weird. They have administrative codes and they issue them in Word files. It is what it is. So, in the state of Florida, when the Department of Health to come out and regulate or inspect or do anything for a spa or a pool, and I have it highlighted here on the screen. Previously, they allowed a residual chlorine, I'll say disinfectant level of 2 to 10 milligrams per liter. You can see here I have it highlighted. Bromine says 1.5 to 10. That's great. Conventional pools, it says 3 to 10, but I'm focusing on spas, 2 to 10. Okay, that's some wiggle room. It's hard to get things accurate, especially as we know bathers will impact the amount of disinfectant there. Rain can impact it. The rain's here all the time. It's hard keeping those chlorine levels normalized. Now, a lot of these places have automatic feeders, but sometimes depending on the amount of change, the amount of bathers, what's going on, it may take a little while for them to catch up. But 2 to 10 is probably a good range. At some point, I say at some point, the state of Florida revised their rules. This says effective 6/11/2023. Didn't even see anything about it. The only way I found out about it is someone got tagged on their changes. State of Florida has now changed to say where water and recreation attracts pools, interactive fountains, 2 milligrams per liter to 5 milligrams per liter for spa type pools. From now, it went from 2 to 10, from 2 to 5. Can you imagine having to keep a pool or a spa in constant compliance with a 3 a, a 3 ppm change level in there? That's a very small amount. I mean, you got 10 bathers a hop in there. That ppm is going to go, and then the system is going to overcorrect, and then when they get out, it's going to go sky high. It's a very small number. I don't know what the scientific justification was for this change. I don't know how many people are aware of this change, but I came across somebody who was getting tagged over and over because they had more or higher amounts than what was recommended or from the administrative code. I think that's important. So now you went down from 2, this is in Florida again, you went from 2 to 10 ppm, now down to 2 to 5 ppm. And you're like, all right, well, that's a very small number. So is there scientific justification for it? Well, that's a good question. So there are other, I'll say, if you're familiar with a few things that are published in the literature, one I'll go to, and this is relevant from, I'll say, cruise ships. That dock here. I don't know if anyone is familiar with the sanitation program, the vessel sanitation program. They have requirements that they talk about on amount of residual chlorine that's necessary. It's put up by CDC, and there has to be compliance. So, what does the VSP say? VSP says, well, swimming pools and spas. Look, they say for whirlpool and spa pool, it has to be greater than 3 and less than 10 of free chlorine. All right, well, CDC recognizes greater than 3 and less than 10. So much wider range than now the 2 to 5 that Florida has. Is anyone, I don't know if anyone is familiar with the other program, the Model Health Code program. If you are unfamiliar with that, I think it's something that you should look up, take a look at. The Model CDC Model Health Program says how much for spas. Free chlorine, minimum of 3 ppm of chlorine in there. It doesn't say a maximum, but there is a minimum recommendation, which Florida's they have 2 as a minimum. The Model Health Code recommends 3. I think it's very hard to maintain that level on a ongoing basis. Interestingly, the best thing is now in the state of Florida, if you're familiar, they have a Legionella, I'll say, guidance document that's published in 2014. But if you go to that guidance document, essentially it says, hey, you know what? You should maintain your spot 2 to 10 ppm. So if you're following something for recommendations for Legionella guidance, and you're following what the state of Florida previously said to manage Legionella in your system, you would be out of compliance with the current health department code that says it has to be 2 to 5, even though you're still trying to manage your Legionella in a way that was previously shown to be scientifically defensible. This gets hard. What is a recommendation? Oh, that's up to the client what they're willing to do. You know, I think it's justifiable if you're having an inspector, you're continually getting tagged for it. Provide the inspector scientific rationale. See if they'll offer some kind of variance. You know, you're maintaining it as part of maybe your facility, maybe your water management plan was written on a 2 to 10 basis for your spa. Now you've got to go down to 2 to 5. It may not be functionally rational to do that. It may not be physically possible to do that for your system. I don't know what kind of systems everyone has set up. You know, if they have automatic feeders, likely most of them do, but there may be subtle corrections that may not be able to be fully articulated within the system, and the system may be all over the place because they're keeping such a small window now of chlorine. I don't know where this came from. I tried to look up some background information. If anyone has any information on why this change was made, what the scientific rationale was, and who made the decision to do this. Was it someone from the Department of Health that said, oh, this is what we think is the best thing to do? Was it, you know, people in elected positions that says, well, you know, this seems good. You know, again, good things and bad things. Good things, they're cleaning cooling towers more. Hopefully it's going to reduce Legionnaires disease. Bad things, they've reduced the amount of chlorine, the maximum amount of chlorine in spas. And there may be more cases, or more alleging more cases of Legionella in spas because, yeah, maybe it was a worry about chemical burns. I don't know. I guess it's like many things with water temperatures. You got to worry about scalding, but if you keep it with under 120, 130 degrees, you're keeping in the zone that Legionella likes to grow. I'd love to hear everyone's opinions. I'd love to get some feedback, have you on, have a chat. If you know anything about why the change was made, the state of Florida level, health department level, or state legislative level, let me know. I'm happy to have a conversation because whenever you make a change, it's going to take a little time to see the effects of it. And I think based on when I see this in 2023 and now we're in 2026 and I see a number of issues with spas lately, I think we're seeing the effects now. Hope I'm wrong, but I don't think this is a change for good. Let me know your thoughts. Hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Exposure Scientist podcast, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon. Thank you so much. Exposure science covers a broad subject area, including toxicology, industrial hygiene, and risk assessment. From occupational, community, or environmental exposure, exposure scientists apply scientific methodologies to understand exposure risks and apply controls when necessary. We at Exposure Assessment Consulting have this expertise. Please reach out to us at info@exposureconsulting.com for a free 15-minute consultation to discuss the specifics of your exposure scenario.